All right. Looks like I'm starting this one out with my kitty here. This is Cleo. I'm pretty sure this is her first time being shown on the channel, so I guess you guys get to meet her. But she'll be hanging out with me here for the a little bit of the period that I'll be doing this video, I suppose. Before I get started, let me go ahead and complete my transition into Gary as I kind of just vent some of these feelings that I have. I want to talk about relationships. This is probably my 8th time trying to make this video. I recorded a few times this morning, like first thing in the morning. But I was like really stony baloney, and so I just like couldn't really. I felt like I was just kind of drifting off with what I was saying without really making a cohesive point. And during the course of the day, I found myself listening to various YouTube videos and things of the like, and I heard someone say something that I think kind of struck a nerve with me and also kind of reminded me of part of what is hurting me. And I think I have at least enough to be able to put into a little video like this and just kind of put it out there and actually have something to say, I guess. But yeah, so I want to talk about relationships. And really, this is the reason why this is significant for me is because just 2 days ago, not last night, but the night before, a woman who I've been in love with for like 10 years through an on and off relationship kind of situation that's been, like I say, going on for about 10 years. She just told me that like this is over, and it's very difficult for me because this is, of course, something that I've heard from her multiple times. And so it's almost kind of been like a delusionment kind of thing for me as to what to believe, what's going on. I'm seeing certain things that indicate that, she may still be, thinking of me or interested or whatever. And like, again, I know how this may sound, but like, this is coming from someone who genuinely loves this person and cares about this person. And so it's been hard. It's been very hard for me to accept that that's now over once again, because I have kind of been able to close the door, so to speak, on this before. I didn't want to, but I had to. And I did it out of respect for her and respect for myself. And so she came back, reached out to me, and then kind of like walked it all back and said it was a mistake and kind of blamed me for it inadvertently. And it is what it is. But I want to talk about like the traditional American family specifically. At least my interpretation of this idea is something like, you got your mom, you got your dad, you got however many children. You don't necessarily have to have children. You can travel, invest in each other, make it run a business, whatever. But in my case, I'd love to have some children and have a stable family, cohesive family that stays together throughout life. And something that I'm finding more and more of in today's culture is this idea that monogamous, persistent, like lifelong relationships are overrated. This idea of love, of course, I'd like to use terminology like it being diluted or dwindled down to. I'm going to try to refrain from using those words to be fair to the people who feel these ways, but it truly does feel as though these words have been engineered, at least, or interpreted to mean that love is something that should be free-flowing, that you get into a relationship with someone, you fall in love with them, and, you don't necessarily need to make this lifelong commitment. And I 100% understand this point to the degree of, just general dating and stuff like that. But I don't want this to go so far for people hearing this as to the takeaway being that like you shouldn't even strive to achieve these kinds of things. You shouldn't even want these things in your life, that these are almost so statistically unlikely of achieving that they're unpractical and that they're unnecessary. I don't like that rhetoric, and again, that might just be me. Sorry, let me get the cat down here. I don't really like that rhetoric when talking about like love. Of course, it's not my business how other people live their lives and choose to engage with love with one another, and however you interpret love and the implementation of love in your life and in your relationship, that's 100% your business. But I suppose for me, this is a little bit of a sensitive spot because 13 years old, I met my father for the first time. He was in prison and kind of like ended up building his own family. And like, I never really saw him much after 13. I hung out every now and again, tried to build a relationship with him, but then it kind of fell out time and time again. Mother was, had kind of a loose relationship with her. Of course, she was there for me, but she would get in relationships and kind of go off and do her own thing. So I was raised by my grandparents, and I'm extremely grateful that I had them. But I grew up in a white suburban area, being someone who was already multicultural. I grew up on the white side of my family, as you could say. My father was black, my mom's white. I am mixed, but of course I was raised around the other side of my family. So growing up around a lot of like other kinds of like families where you see the mom and dad and the children, and they're all happy together in the household, and they eat dinner together, and they watch movies together, and they go and do activities together. And like, there were times where I grew up skateboarding. So like, I would go like with one of my friends who I skateboarded with. He had an older sister who played volleyball. And so his family would take us with them to go to the sisters volleyball tournament, and we could go skate and do our own thing and support like, that's family. You know what I mean? Like, this is something that I think all the problems that we're talking about today in terms of like the trauma that children experience that we like have to deal with as young adults, like everything that I feel like I'm struggling through right now, I feel like would be infinitely easier and better and more comfortable and like progressive for children if they didn't have to deal with that stuff. If they got to experience these kinds of things that I'm talking about, where like you have family that can facilitate true like community and culture outside of school, right? And I just don't feel like that's as plausible to achieve in this free-flowing idea of relationships throughout your entire life. Again, when you're dating, if you're 18 years old, if you're 20 years old, if you're 30 years old, if you're 40 years old, let's say you got married one time, shit went bad, you got divorced, and now you're dating again. I get it. You know what I mean? It is okay. Love flows, sure, great. But like, and there doesn't have to be this notion of the one. You can fall in love with somebody, the love can fall out, you can go on to fall in love with somebody else. It doesn't have to be this binary 1 and 0 kind of thing. However, when you start contemplating the idea of having children, especially in today's day and age, if you're so concerned about the well-being of your children, most of the people who don't want to have them, they're like, oh, I don't want them to have to grow up in this kind of shit, right? If that's what you're concerned about, try to stay together with your partner. Try to give them set them up with every single piece that you can for success. Because the more time that they have to spend coping and isolating and going through fucking dumbass fucking struggles in life, because not only maybe they had the information presented to them, or maybe they had to live with it, maybe they had the guidance, but they didn't have a collection of all three. They didn't have the facilitation over them to like, the helicopter parenting that people talk about. That's its own thing, and I don't want to get into it. I can't speak enough to that, right? But at the very least, like, having those parents that do care about you and do want to like be a safety net to help lift you to success and have some form of like true guidance and investment in you and understanding of you, That is like the ultimate, I feel like, support you can have as a child. And if we advocate for this idea of love that is just fluid and new, like, oh, it is what it is. Like, I love the person, and now I'm gonna move on to the next thing. Like, children, other lives are involved. You know what I mean? And I think you're taking for granted the fact that you've made a choice to procreate with this person. Yes, there are other animals out there that they procreate and they fucking eat the head off, the other creature. They one of them, they go off and do their own thing. I get it, right? But we understand that at the very least, with emotional intelligence and having consciousness and awareness of the human experience, experiencing trauma, experiencing emotional damage, experiencing, childhood stress and struggle and suffrage, like, being able to mitigate that through having stable parental, like, presence. I don't want to bash people who, shit happens. I get it. You can't always predict for the future, and things fall out. You end up co-parenting. I'm not here to bash people that are in these situations, but I'm not going to stand down on the idea that, objectively speaking, it is better for that child to have those parents together under one roof, to be there with them. Maybe it's one thing to be able to expose them to two various different cultures, and have those cultures separated under different roofs. Maybe you could make a point to argue that that's nice, and have a family here and a family here, and they're both able to get along and do their own thing. Maybe there is this idea of love where, you have kids and maybe you decide you fall out of love and you go on to find another partner who may already have children, or you go on to have children with them, or you don't have children with them. Whatever you do, the family all gets together and everybody's okay and sings together in Kumbaya, and it's even a bigger family and everybody's even happier. Sure, I'll give it to you, right? But at the very least, through my own experience, through my own perspective, and this is just my interpretation, so take it with a grain of salt, but I really, really don't like this idea of relationships, of treating it like it's just like the wind, like it's something with the seasons. It's okay to let things go. Absolutely, it's okay to have to move on, to choose to move on when things aren't working out anymore. No one should suffer through a relationship that isn't working. But at the very least, when you have the decision to have children, there should be that mutual decision of investment in each other that is fundamental to who you are. Like, it interweaves with who you are as a person, and that doesn't change. That just feels right to me. And if we embrace this idea of doing otherwise, which, again, I have no issue with that, with people who choose to do that per se, but at least with the idea of implementing such ideas in my own life, like, I just feel like that is embracing or choosing to give in to this idea of, like, not being able to really understand somebody else, not really being able to go outside of my own head and leave this idea of, like, purely self, what I need, what I want, what I feel for, and I do feel like there's a lot of that, when people talk about, like, the icks and things like that, or red flags. I don't like this culture that's being created of objectifying people, or using therapeutic culture and terms that are used to identify, like, real toxic traits or habits or patterns of thinking in people, and, like, using these general outlines for these applications of things to apply and template over individuals based on situations that you experience with them. Like, it has gone so far so quickly, and I feel like people are more disconnected. Two people sitting in the same room still feel worlds apart from each other. And I think that's like what the when we talk about these kinds of issues, like that's kind of the issue I'm speaking to, not just in terms of intimate relationships, but even in terms of relationships with your friends. Like, how many times when you have your friend come over and you hang out with them one on one, do you really feel like they care about what you're going through, that they're invested in your well being, and that you're on like the same kind of page in terms of like what you're working towards in your life? How many times does that happen? How many times do you sometimes feel that you're right there hanging out with this person, but there are interactions that you may have with them that indicate to you like we are still living in completely different worlds? Not even in any terms of like ranking or hierarchy, but simply just thinking even just laterally here. Like, you know, you're clearly into this kind of perspective and you know, trying to achieve these kinds of goals. I'm trying to achieve these kinds of goals. They're just different fundamentally. Not about one being better than the other. They're just different. There's so much talk about having to cut people off in your life, and don't get me wrong, like I am someone who has very much felt like sometimes I have friends that may hurt my feelings or may you know, may feel like they may not have my best interest. But a question that's often challenged me is like, how do you deal with a friend who feels like they are being a complete asshole to you on one hand, but on the other, you have this feeling that maybe they do have your best interest or that they do at least care about you? How do you deal with that? You know, if someone cares about you, what reason do you have to truly cut them off? What does that say about you as a character? If you know that they care about you, but like they're just holding you back or whatever, and you're unable to communicate and be able to make that work, so you just have to cut them off, what does that say? And I don't know. Maybe I have struggled. Maybe I have fell backwards. Maybe I have, you know, been knocked off my balance by holding on to so many relationships that I maybe otherwise shouldn't have. But I'm someone who really does believe in this idea of long-term valued relationships, being able to learn through people. Community is something I believe in, and you can't have community without that. You like I even if you're somebody who I made good friends with and I don't talk to for a period of time, like I value relationships where that can happen, and 6 months later, 3 months later, 4 months later, we hang out and pick right back up where we left off. I have friends like that. I all of these people, you know, I love them, you know, but it's not just something that I just let go of. And I don't know, I think that people are so promiscuous in terms of their attention, in terms of their stimulation and their wants. There's a quote that I guess I'll wrap this up with that really has been resonating with me lately. To live in this world, but not of this world. There are many things in this world, especially now, that I think are being, I mean, I'll speak on this, I think, in another video, but social engineering is real. You know, I've heard the term media poisoning recently, and I'm sure, you know, this is definitely something that exists. Of course, doomerism, alarmism, terms like these to describe people who are just acting like it's a terminal kind of illness among the world. That's not what I'm here to say. But I do think we are in kind of a critical condition. I do think there are real problems that need addressing. And I do think part of that includes worldly values, worldly things, and our obsession with these things. I think this is a real thing. I think whether or not people are aware of this in their own lives or feel this applies to them, I think in many cases it applies to a lot of people, at the very least, who are in unhappy or dissatisfied positions or disenchanted positions within their lives. I think this is real, and I think it has severe and enormous ripple effects on relationships, not only, again, intimately, but with your friends and family. You know, if you find yourself feeling disconnected, I have felt so before. I think that I am someone who has suffered from this idea of obsession with worldly things. I would much rather prefer, to sit down with someone, be vulnerable with them, and have a long lasting relationship and be able to, cook with them, go out and do things with them. And those are the things that really mean everything to me. When my friends and I go out and do stuff together, that shit feels like I'm doing it's with the boys. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm 25 years old, but I'm still doing shit with the boys. You know what I mean? With the men's group. Like real shit. And I want to be able to do that stuff in a relationship too. And I really don't want relationships to feel like it's a communication trap, like it's a game of chess and communication, like it's a defensive stance of each other's positions and trying to read each other for the next, attack that they're going to make at you and how you're going to respond to that to prevent yourself from, being attacked again. I hope that if there's one thing you can take away from this, don't be afraid to invest in somebody else. Don't be afraid to dig within yourself, um, to support someone else, to be there for someone else. Even if you find yourself, you know, feeling hurt by that person or feeling upset with that person, revisit that relationship. Have a conversation that's open and that doesn't hold bias towards them. We as humans are all like fumbling through these lives. And if we all believe that there are these problems, or if many of us even believe that there are so many problems among the world, who are we to be so insensitive to others' struggle to deal with those same problems that we are struggling to deal with? I want people to be considerate of the fact that this is a lineage, that life isn't just you. I understand we all are very much aware of the fact that we ourselves only get one life, but we also need to understand of like what that means, what the broader implications of our life is. It's not something that's self-contained within our own experience. We have an impact and an influence on culture, on our surroundings, the people around us, and the future generations, not only of ourselves and our communities, but that can go up to our country, our politics, our views, our societal influences, etc. We all have potential to engage in these affairs. And, you know, I just, even when we talk about something as principle as love, I don't think it should be seen as something so transient. I think true love is a commitment, you know, to see the best in each other, and to even see a part of someone else that they may not see themselves, and to love them for every bit that you are exposed to and that you see, and to be invested in their spiritual growth and their happiness and their success. If that's something that you find yourself losing, at least in today's day and age, I think there are things to consider in terms of self-reflection, for why you may feel those ways, or at the very least how you may found yourself in that situation. I mean, it is okay to make mistakes. Maybe you truly believed something until you got to this point and realized it was otherwise, but how else can you mitigate situations like these other than awareness? And I just don't feel like that's found through what seems to be this coping type idea of just letting love be something that you can let go of and not commit to. So anyways, I'm going to wrap this one up, guys. This has been a 30-minute video. To everybody who made it to the end, I appreciate you guys. I will probably be making another one talking about social engineering and some of these problems that I feel like I've been experiencing in the world. But for now, this is going to be the end. Again, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.